Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going back in time to the late 1700s, a period of just intense political upheaval and a lot of paranoia.
Mm.
You might have heard whispers about the Illuminati, a supposed secret society, often blamed for orchestrating the French Revolution, right?
Mm.
But is there any truth to these claims, and why did this theory gain so much traction, especially in America?
Well, I think, what's so captivating about this period is that a theory that might seem pretty out there to us today actually captivated the minds of, many intelligent and influential people in the late 18th century.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we form our own beliefs, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
so to understand this phenomenon, we're gonna delve into the works of Augustin Barrault,
Yeah.
a Jesuit priest who fled the French Revolution and ended up in London in the 1790s.
Yeah, Barol became like obsessed with this idea that the revolution was no accident, but a carefully planned conspiracy by anti-religious forces, specifically the Illuminati, who he linked to the Freemasons.
Hmm.
And he laid out this really elaborate theory in two books, and it was the second one, uh, Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism, that really sent shockwaves across the Atlantic.
So why did Americans take the bait? I mean, it wasn't just mass hysteria, right?
Right.
There's got to be more to it.
Yeah, to understand this, I think we really need to consider like the unique ways knowledge and truth were evaluated in the early modern Atlantic world. So
Okay.
imagine a world, without the internet, without instant fact checking, or even widespread literacy.
Right.
Back then, people relied very heavily on trusted figures. I think the religious leaders, scholars, or just prominent community members to interpret information for them.
So the messenger was just as important as the message itself, which makes sense, right? It's kind of like how we might trust a news source or a respected expert today.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to Barrault. Interestingly, his first book about the French Revolution, History of the Clergy, published in the U.S. in 1794, pretty much flopped.
Hmm.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think timing is everything, right? So in the mid 1790s, a lot of Americans were actually sympathetic to the French Revolution and its ideals, including its anti-clerical stance.
Bro.
And Berulle, who was really defending the persecuted French clergy, wasn't exactly, striking a chord.
Plus, you have to remember the historical context, right? I mean, Americans were deeply suspicious of anything coming out of Britain at that time.
Right.
They saw it as propaganda, and guess where Barrault published his book?
London.
Yep, London. Not exactly a recipe for success.
No, not at all. And in fact, there's even a story about one American critic, Ezra Stiles, who argued that Berulle he was too far removed from France to really understand its true religious landscape.
Huh.
And he basically dismissed Berulle as an outsider with a skewed perspective.
Hmm. Interesting. But then, just a few years later, the tide starts to turn, right? By 1798, a series of events, including the XYZ affair, which involved, some shady diplomatic dealings with France, really soured American attitudes towards the French Revolution.
Yes.
Suddenly, those British sources didn't seem so suspicious anymore.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
it's almost like overnight, people's perceptions changed.
And this shift in perception really created the perfect breeding ground for Burrell's second book, Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism, to take root.
Okay.
And this time he shifted the focus to the Illuminati, claiming they were the puppet masters behind the whole French Revolution. And this really played into, existing American anxieties about secret societies.
Yeah, it's interesting how our fears can sometimes make us vulnerable to certain ideas, even if they seem a bit out there. Was there anything specific about American society at that time that made them particularly susceptible to these fears about secret societies?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Think about groups like the Democratic Republican clubs or the United Irishmen.
Okay.
These were organizations that, while advocating for political change, were also seen by some as shadowy and subversive, potentially plotting against the established order.
Okay.
And so Barulle's theory tapped right into those anxieties, giving them a global and even more sinister dimension.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to note, though, that these were legitimate political organizations, not actual secret societies.
Right.
But they became easy targets
Mhm.
for this kind of conspiratorial thinking.
Okay, so we have this this fertile ground of fear and suspicion, and then Barul's book lands in America. But how did this theory spread so quickly? Enter Jedediah Morse, an influential preacher and geographer from Massachusetts. He becomes Barul's biggest American champion, and what's fascinating is that he was initially a supporter of the French Revolution.
Yeah, that's one of the ironies of this whole story, right?
Yeah.
Morse did a complete 180 after encountering Barul's work.
Wow.
He became convinced that the Illuminati theory was the key to understanding, the chaos engulfing Europe.
So what did he do? Did he just start preaching about it from the pulpit?
He went all in. He used his sermons, of course, but he also published pamphlets, wrote letters, and he really leveraged his vast network of contacts to spread the Illuminati theory far and wide.
Mm-hmm.
And he framed it as a well-authenticated truth,
Right.
supported by transatlantic intellectuals.
It's amazing how one person can have such a ripple effect, especially back then when, information traveled much, much slower.
Oh, absolutely.
Did most Americans actually read Barul's book themselves?
Not necessarily. Memoirs illustrating the history of Jacobinism was a massive, expensive book, not something the average person could easily, access or afford.
Right.
So many Americans who believed in the Illuminati conspiracy never actually read it themselves.
They just took Morse's word for it.
Yeah, they relied on Morse and other respected figures to kind of relay the information.
It's a reminder that we often form our beliefs based on what we hear from people we trust, even if we haven't, personally examined the evidence ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
But Morse wasn't the only one spreading the word, right? There was also this Scottish connection with John Robison.
That's right.
Tell us about him.
So John Robinson, a Scottish academic, published his own book called Proofs of a Conspiracy. And this further fueled the Illuminati scare in the U.S.
Okay.
What made his book so influential was that it was shorter, it was cheaper,
right,
and therefore much more accessible to the average American. Plus,
mm-hmm.
Robinson was a respected figure at the University of Edinburgh, instant credibility, just like with Morse.
So it's not just about what you say, but who's saying it.
Exactly.
Did Americans see Robison as a more credible source than Barul?
In a way, yes. Because Robison was writing from Scotland, he was seen as less tainted by anti-French bias,
right,
than someone like Barul, who's living in London. Remember, Americans were still wary of anything coming from England.
Yeah.
So having this seemingly independent voice from Scotland added another layer of legitimacy to the Illuminati theory.
It's amazing how these international connections and perceptions of authority played such a crucial role in shaping American beliefs about the French Revolution. But not everyone bought into this conspiracy theory, right? I mean, there were skeptics who tried to debunk it.
Yeah, no.
How did they approach this challenge?
Well, and that's what's so fascinating about this period. These critics, they relied on the same methods of knowledge validation as Morse and his supporters. They looked for authorities, publications, and respected names to back up their arguments. So they were essentially fighting fire with fire.
So it was like a battle of the intellectuals, each side wielding their own, arsenal of evidence and prestigious endorsements.
Precisely.
Were there any notable clashes between these opposing camps?
Oh yeah, there were.
Tell us about one.
One particularly dramatic example is this public debate between Jedediah Morse and a critic nicknamed Censor that played out in a Massachusetts newspaper.
Oh wow.
Both sides cited European scholars, literary journals, and anything they could find to bolster their position.
I bet those newspapers were buzzing with excitement.
Oh,
What were the main arguments used by each side?
Well, both Morse and Censor drew upon a range of sources to support their positions. They cited European scholars. They referenced recent publications and even quoted from literary journals.
Yeah.
It was almost like a courtroom drama with each side, presenting their evidence and trying to sway public opinion.
It sounds like a fascinating glimpse into the intellectual culture of the time, but at the heart of this debate was a fundamental question, right? Who do we trust to tell us what's true.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. That's the essence of what we call epistemic authority,
Mm.
which basically means who do we believe has the knowledge and the credibility to tell us what's real and what's not.
Right. Yeah.
And in the late 18th century, this authority was often tied to social status and intellectual reputation.
So it wasn't enough to simply present facts.
Right.
You had to be seen as a credible source, someone worthy of being listened to.
Right. Exactly.
And that often meant being a man of letters, a scholar, or a religious leader.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Those were the gatekeepers of knowledge,
Right.
the ones who shaped public discourse and influenced the way people understood the world around them.
But even within this system of trusted authorities, there were cracks.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier this intriguing episode involving a letter from a German professor named Christoph Daniel Ebling to Jedediah Morse,
Right.
and this letter seemed to challenge the whole Illuminati narrative.
Yeah, this episode is particularly fascinating because it highlights, the power of perception and how information could be manipulated even back then.
Right.
So Ebling in his letter did express some reservations about the more extreme claims regarding the Illuminati's influence.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't necessarily denying their existence, but questioned the extent of their reach and their supposed role in orchestrating global revolutions.
So he was more of a skeptic than an outright denier of the Illuminati theory.
Exactly.
But how is this letter received in America?
Well, the Republicans who were generally opposed to the Federalists and their embrace of the Illuminati theory, they seized upon this letter as a smoking gun.
Oh, wow.
They circulated it widely, claiming it as definitive proof that the whole Illuminati scare was a fabrication, a ploy to discredit their political opponents.
It sounds like they were using this letter to further their own political agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
But was Ebling's critique really that damning? Did it actually debunk the Illuminati theory?
See, and that's where things get really interesting. Ebling's criticisms, while noteworthy, were actually quite nuanced.
Oh,
He didn't outright denounce the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, he suggested that their influence might be overstated. Their goals perhaps less grand and sinister than Barul and Morse had portrayed them.
So it was more of a subtle challenge than a complete debunking of the theory.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
How did Morse respond to this? Did he acknowledge Ebling's critique?
And here's where the story takes another intriguing turn.
Mm-hmm.
Morse, when confronted with the letter, he denied ever receiving the version that was being circulated by the Republicans.
Huh.
He claimed that it was a misrepresentation, a distorted version of Ebling's original message.
Wait, so we're not even sure what the actual letter said.
Yes,
It's like a historical mystery.
Yeah, only fragments of Ebling's original letter have survived. So
Yeah.
the full content and therefore the true nature of his critique remains lost to history.
Wow, talk about a historical cliffhanger.
It really is.
It's almost like a real life conspiracy thriller.
Yeah, it really is.
So we have this back and forth, this battle of ideas and authorities, but eventually the fervor over the Illuminati started to fizzle out.
Right.
What happened? Did people just realize it was all a bit far-fetched?
Well, I think several factors contributed to the decline of the Illuminati scare.
Okay.
By 1800, the political climate was shifting, and concrete evidence of this grand conspiracy, it never materialized.
Right.
So as time went on and fears of a French orchestrated revolution subsided, the theory started to lose its grip.
It's a reminder that even the most sensational theories can lose their power when faced with the test of time and scrutiny. But this deep dive into the Illuminati scare isn't just a quirky historical footnote, right? It raises important questions about how knowledge is produced, validated, and disseminated even today.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll explore those connections further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So as we've seen, the late 1700s was just a time of intense anxiety, uncertainty.
Yeah.
And in this climate of fear, The Illuminati theory, fueled by figures like Barul, Morse, and Robeson, really took hold. And it's fascinating how a theory that might seem, outlandish to us today actually shaped the way people understood the world back then.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that, knowledge is never it's never neutral.
Right.
It's always shaped by the context in which it's produced and consumed.
Right.
And in the late 18th century, that context was one of, profound social and political upheaval.
Right. People were grappling with revolutions, wars, the rise of new ideologies. It's no wonder they were looking for explanations for someone or something to blame for all the chaos. But as we discussed, not everyone jumped on the Illuminati bandwagon.
Right.
Right.
There were those who pushed back, who questioned the validity of this whole conspiracy theory. How do they go about challenging such a widespread belief?
Well, what's interesting is that these critics often employed the same tactics as those promoting the Illuminati theory.
Okay.
They appealed to authority, citing scholars, publications, and expert opinions to support their arguments.
Right.
It was a battle of ideas, fought on the terrain of intellectual prestige and social standing.
So it wasn't just about, presenting facts, but about aligning yourself with the right people, with those who held sway in the intellectual landscape of the time.
Exactly.
Which makes sense considering how much emphasis was placed on respectability and social hierarchy back then.
Absolutely. I mean, remember, we're talking about a world where access to information was limited, and people relied very heavily on trusted sources to kind of guide their understanding.
It was a time when, a well-placed endorsement from a respected figure could carry immense weight.
Were there any particularly memorable clashes between those who believed in the Illuminati theory and those who debunked it?
Oh yeah.
It sounds like there could have been some pretty heated debates.
There were. Oh yeah. One particularly interesting episode involved a public exchange between Jedediah Morse, our champion of the Illuminati theory, and a critic who went by the pseudonym Censor.
Okay.
This back and forth played out in the pages of a Massachusetts newspaper, and it really captured the dynamics of this intellectual battle.
I bet those newspapers were buzzing with excitement.
Oh, absolutely.
What were the main arguments used by each side?
Well, both Morse and Censor drew upon a range of sources to support their position. They cited European scholars, they referenced recent publications, and even quoted from literary journals.
Wow.
It was almost like a courtroom drama with each side, presenting their evidence and trying to sway public opinion.
It sounds like a fascinating glimpse into the intellectual culture of the time, but at the heart of this debate was a fundamental question, right? Who do we trust to tell us what's true?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That's the essence of what we call epistemic authority.
Right.
In simpler terms, it's about who we believe has the knowledge and the credibility to tell us what's real and what's not.
Right.
And in the late 18th century, this authority was often tied to social status and intellectual reputation.
So it wasn't enough to simply present facts.
Right.
You had to be seen as a credible source, someone worthy of being listened to.
Right.
And that often meant being a man of letters, a scholar, or a religious leader.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Those were the gatekeepers of knowledge, the ones who shaped public discourse and influenced the way people understood the world around them.
But even within this system of trusted authorities, there were cracks.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier this intriguing episode involving a letter from a German professor named Christoph Daniel Ibling to Jedediah Morse.
Right.
And this letter seemed to challenge the whole Illuminati narrative.
Yeah, this episode is particularly fascinating because it highlights the power of perception and how information could be manipulated even back then.
Right.
So Ibling in his letter did express some reservations about the more extreme claims regarding the Illuminati's influence. He wasn't necessarily denying their existence, but questioned questioned the extent of their reach and their supposed role in orchestrating global revolutions.
So he was more of a skeptic than an outright denier of the Illuminati theory.
Exactly.
But how was this letter received in America?
Well, the Republicans who were generally opposed to the Federalists and their embrace of the Illuminati theory,
Mm-hmm.
they seized upon this letter as a smoking gun.
Oh, wow.
They circulated it widely, claiming it as definitive proof that the whole Illuminati scare was a fabrication, a ploy to discredit their political opponents.
It sounds like they were using this letter to further their own political agenda.
Oh, absolutely.
But was Ebeling's critique really that damning? Did it actually debunk the Illuminati theory?
See, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Ebeling's criticisms, while noteworthy, were actually quite nuanced. He didn't outright denounce the Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, he suggested that their influence might be overstated. Their goals perhaps less grand and sinister than Barruel and Morse had portrayed them.
So it was more of a subtle challenge than a complete debunking of the theory.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
How did Morse respond to this? Did he acknowledge Ebeling's critique?
And here's where the story takes another intriguing turn.
Okay.
Morse, when confronted with the letter, he denied ever receiving the version that was being circulated by the Republicans.
Huh.
He claimed that it was a misrepresentation, a distorted version of Ebeling's original message.
Wait, so we're not even sure what the actual letter said?
Exactly. Only fragments of Ebeling's original letter has survived, so
Yeah.
the full content and therefore the true nature of his critique remains lost to history.
It's like a historical mystery.
It really is.
Wow. Talk about a historical cliffhanger.
It's a tantalizing reminder that our understanding of the past is often incomplete, shaped by the fragments that remain and the interpretations that we place upon them.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces,
Mm-hmm.
leaving us to wonder about the full picture.
Exactly.
So despite these challenges, the bluff in the Illuminati, it persisted for a while. Right?
Yeah, the scare didn't simply vanish overnight.
Right.
But as time went on and as the fervor of the French Revolution subsided, the theory it began to lose its grip on the American imagination.
Okay.
Concrete evidence of this grand conspiracy never materialized.
Right.
And as fears of a French orchestrated revolution faded the Illuminati theory, it gradually retreated to the fringes of public discourse.
It's fascinating how the ebb and flow of historical events can shape the rise and fall of even the most compelling conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
But even though the Illuminati scare eventually faded, it left a lasting legacy.
Absolutely.
I mean, it serves as a cautionary tale about the power of fear, the importance of critical thinking, and the ways in which knowledge and authority can be intertwined sometimes to dangerous effect.
Mm-hmm.
And we can draw valuable lessons from this historical episode, lessons that are perhaps even more relevant in our current age of information overload and online conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
It makes you wonder how future generations will view our own beliefs and the systems of knowledge validation that we rely upon today. But that's a discussion for another deep dive.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
It's amazing how a theory that seems so outlandish today could have gripped a nation centuries ago.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've seen, the Illuminati scare wasn't just some random panic. It was deeply intertwined with how knowledge was produced, validated, and spread in the late 1700s.
Yeah, and what's particularly striking is how the perceived credibility of the messenger played such a crucial role in shaping public opinion.
Right.
You know, a respected figure like like Jedediah Morse endorsing the Illuminati theory, it lent it a weight it wouldn't have had otherwise.
Think about it this way. Imagine trying to understand a complex global event today. Without the internet or access to a variety of sources, you'd likely rely on experts, news outlets, or influential figures to help you, make sense of it all, wouldn't you?
Precisely. I mean, we're constantly filtering information even now, but back then those trusted voices held even more sway.
Right.
And the consequences of accepting their interpretations, especially when it came to something like the Illuminati theory, were significant.
Right. We're not just talking about abstract ideas here. These theories about secret societies and revolutionary plots. They fueled real world anxieties, political divisions, and even influenced policy decisions.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that ideas, even those rooted in conspiracy theories, have the power to shape history.
So what does this all mean for us today? I mean, we may have the internet and instant access to information, but are we really that different from those Americans grappling with the Illuminati scare?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, we might like to think we're more sophisticated, more discerning in our consumption of information, but think about the information we encounter daily: news, social media, even academic research. It's still shaped by gatekeepers, algorithms, and of course our own biases.
So how do we navigate this complex information landscape? How can we be more critical consumers of information, especially in a world where misinformation can spread so quickly?
Yeah, it requires a healthy dose of skepticism, a willingness to question our assumptions, and most importantly, a commitment to seeking out multiple perspectives.
Yeah, don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper. Look for evidence. Consider the source and be aware of potential biases, both in the information itself and in your own interpretation.
Exactly.
Right.
And remember, even in the late 1700s, amidst all the fear and paranoia, there were those who challenged the prevailing narrative.
Right.
Who dared to question those in positions of authority.
It's that spirit of intellectual curiosity and critical thinking that we need to carry forward.
Yeah, a commitment to truth seeking and a healthy dose of show me the evidence.
Absolutely.
It's an ongoing process. There are no easy answers or quick fixes, but by being aware of the potential pitfalls, by being willing to challenge our own assumptions, we can become more informed, more engaged, and ultimately more responsible citizens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive into the Illuminati scare. We hope you've enjoyed this journey back in time.
Yes.
And that it's left you with some food for thought.
Absolutely.
A bit more skepticism and perhaps a renewed appreciation for the complexities of history and the enduring challenges of navigating a world of information.
Keep those minds curious and those questions coming.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.